everybody. Thanks for tuning in to the Uncommon Podcast. Hey, I'm Josh. This is Chris. We're so excited to be here with you again today. Thank you for listening and following, and wherever you may be, in the gym, online, at the house, or just driving a vehicle, doing your thing. Hey! So, today, we're going to follow up with our previous episode where we were focused on self-reflection, also known or focused on, because we're coaches, as self-coaching. We talked about how, just to quickly recap, how this is an effective and cost-efficient way to really analyze yourself and make sure that you are doing the best and being the best that you could be, right? Being a good brother, right, to one another. And in our show notes, we talk about, and so make sure you go there for additional information, asking yourself some specific questions such as, who am I? What am I? Why am I? When am I? Where am I? And how am I? And then applying those in specific ways that can allow for you to see how you can improve. And so some areas of improvement that we're going to discuss in the future include today talking about communication, and Chris is going to unpack that in just a moment. But also for future episodes, faith and spiritual conversations, mental and emotional, and then also fitness. Again, today's topic is communication. And we're going to be asking the question, Chris, who am I communicating, right, with or to? What am I communicating, maybe about or for? Why am I communicating? When am I maybe going to communicate to somebody about something? Work or personal life? Mm-hmm. Where am I communicating, such as, work, online, social media platforms, etc. And how am I communicating in those fashions? Text, call, email. There's so many facets, and words are so important. So if you want to unpack that, Chris.
Yeah. So I really like, and I held on to this. I wrote it down. You said the phrase cost effective. And then, I think that speaks to me. I'm a numbers person. I think it speaks to a lot of guys,
right? Absolutely.
Because I mean, historically, I feel like guys are like no BS, right? Like no bullshit. Like we just want to get to the point,
right?
We don't want a sugarcoated. We don't want no Eminem rapping about it. We want to get to the point. We want to talk about what we're going to talk about. Get it done. Get it over with.
Right.
And so, when we talk about communication, for us, I think as men, we have to own that. Mm-hmm. We have to own that. And we have talked about this forms of communication before in other podcasts. Mm-hmm. But asking those questions, those are 6 questions that we kind of came up with that are kind of crucial to identifying what we're going to communicate. Right? It may take a little bit longer for us to kind of process through those things, mm-hmm. but in the end, it's going to make things that much more efficient. Mm-hmm. It's going to make things more focused, mm-hmm. And we'll come out, smelling like roses at the end of the day. And I think our partners will appreciate the fact that we kind of thought things through.
Right.
And it'll probably help us filter out whether or not we even need to talk about some stuff. And so, you talked about, who am I communicating to? Mm-hmm. Right? What am I communicating? Mm-hmm. Why am I communicating mm-hmm. what I'm communicating right now? Mm-hmm. When is the right time to do that? Because it's not always right now.
Right.
You and I know that. And what environment are we communicating mm-hmm. this? Obviously, if it's a heated conversation, things like that, we don't want to talk about that in front of our kids or in front of other family members. Mm-hmm. We might have to park that and stick it in our back pocket, and that might be a phone call, or on the ride home mm-hmm. conversation, or in mm-hmm. the bedroom before we go to sleep conversation. And how am I communicating that? If we're having a texting conversation, things get heated, I'm on the golf course and she's at home, or she's at an event with the kids and I'm at the gym, we're separate. How are we discussing through those things? And so I think we've had some extensive conversations about about that, and that's kind of where we come up with these 6 kind of questions
Yeah.
to help not just ourselves, but help other men kind of filter through how and the best ways that we can communicate with our partner, and also with ourselves to kind of have peace with whatever it is that we're going through.
Yeah.
I had a situation with a cousin of mine that very recently, and historically speaking, my family is very hard-headed, and we just kind of dip out. You know, things get super hard. We don't know how to process. We don't know how to identify. We don't know how to communicate, and we just jump on the first reaction. You don't want us here. I'm not good enough. You know, whatever the case might be. So I'm gonna pack and I'm gonna bounce.
Oh, dang.
Kind of deal. And so you know, I'm helping. You know, work through some of those feelings as far as that goes, and I have learned a lot about myself since my divorce about working through that. That's kind of where a lot of these questions have come from, and you know, yours too, coming from previous relationships, not just with you know, women, but like kids and family members and all kinds of, you know, complex situations that we weren't expecting to have in our lives, but you know, you and I going through this podcast together and having some level of accountability have like kind of grounded. And so we didn't handle this right, but we've learned this and this, and that's kind of where these questions developed. So now we can hold ourselves accountable, but also give some of these tools that we've learned to other men. Yeah. Right.
In our hearing you say that in our last podcast, we talked about these ideas, how you had mentioned they were kind of complicated, you know, and so like the thought process of them, or we didn't want to answer. We joked in how like I didn't want to talk about him. I didn't want to be transparent, and I was like, I'm feeling kind of shy, and because I was asking you if you want to share with our audience and with us about it, and then I think there was one you went to that you felt most comfortable, which evolved into our dialogue to where you could feel more comfortable talking about the others. But that takes one courage. So I think like that's something that, you know, you have to have with yourself. But I love to go back to what you were saying, because it's not just partners. Thank you for bringing in the story about your cousin. Because yes, it's important to talk to our partners that way, but in a way that we care, or we think about how or who or what, right?
Yeah.
But being, I guess, conscious of it, like we talked about, and maybe that's a good time to break that down. We're going to give you guys one word of kind of each of these to make it simpler for you to understand, to find the best success in self-reflection. So we talk about who am I and what am I is essentially to help you find that purpose. Like you're talking about with our partners, that purpose is maintaining that relationship.
Yeah.
Or if that relationship is severed, there's still some type of relationship that has to be maintained.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were talking
and then
about
with the cousin, of course, it's a different scenario.
The purpose of that conversation, the purpose of you know, communicating whatever it is we're communicating. What is that?
What is that?
Right, and that's the combination of who and what. Who am I communicating with? Is that my kids?
Right.
Is that my ex-wife? Is that my son's mom? Is that my mom? Is that my sister, my brother? You know, that makes a huge difference in the message that we're going to essentially communicate, right? And what am I communicating? Is it just my feelings?
Yeah.
Is it like a solution to a problem? Is it feedback that maybe I wasn't even asked of? You know, like those are all things that kind of help us through that kind of stuff, because we you know, as men, just focusing on those two things help us really filter through a lot of issues, because again, as men, we're fixers and we're doers, right? And that's what our women want. Really, there's this whole like, you know, masculine and feminine movement, and it's happening, and gender roles and all these things. We have a whole other podcast about that. But really, what women want is they want a man to take control and take ownership, right, and take lead, and do all those things. And what men want is women that will allow them to do that.
Yes.
Right, and so
that's biblical.
Yeah, that's a literal yeah, you're right. A biblical family dynamic. That's what God intended for the family to be. And first and foremost, for the man to lead that family to Him. Right? That was, yeah, you're right, absolutely right. But in a lot of cases, situations of communication don't require us, even as leaders, to fix a situation. I'll talk about my story later on, but there's a lot of cases where we misconstrue communication from our partners. Then we need to fix their problems, right? And that was kind of a light bulb for us in discussion that, like, our partner, our wife, our spouse, our girlfriend, even our kids bring home what we identify as drama, right? Unnecessary drama in a lot of cases, because guys are traditionally drama people, right? We're like, well, that's stupid. Like, just forget about it and move on and do your thing. But that situation just requires us to listen. Those folks, again, our partner, our kids, they're not asking us to fix that problem. They're just unloading and identifying who it is we're communicating with, because that's a form of communication, listening, and we've covered that in a previous podcast. And what am I communicating? All are really good filtering systems for us to take a lot of weight off of our shoulders in so many different situations.
And what I'm thinking about is hearing you say that, like, the unloading part is recognizing that's wisdom, because sometimes it is a request to fix, right? Like, Dad, I broke this, or can you help me?
Yes, sure.
Right? I need a ball pump or something, right? But other times it is just, and that wisdom is knowing the difference. When to speak and when not to speak. When to listen and when to speak. When to give advice.
That's exactly right, because it's more than half the time, and I'm sure in your dynamic, right? Your wife and you have a business that comes with, unfortunately, a lot of drama, right? With your salon and working with a lot of women in some cases, in those situations, personal situations that shouldn't be brought in, but it just happens. Right? And so your wife probably brings some of that home. Sometimes. And did she ask, when she's unloading, right, unpacking her day, did she ask, what do I do? Right? And a lot of times, as men, sometimes she does. But a lot of times as men, we don't pay attention to that. We just assume that she wants us to fix that.
Yeah, there's some.
Did she even ask that question? I don't think she did.
Yeah.
And so, okay, well, here's a glass of wine. Here's a plate of food.
Yes.
And that's the solution.
Sometimes that's the solution.
And
for the day. Like, we'll talk about this more. Let's just
exactly. That's all.
Yeah.
That's all. And we spend so much. I think as men, we spend so much energy. On trying to fix that problem when we weren't even asked to do that.
Hearing you say that, what I've learned is, through failure, doing the wrong thing, doing what you've stated specifically, just food and a glass of wine type of scenario, to where I can, let my wife unload and listen, and then realize, listen, hey, I'm gonna soak that in. I've got to really think on this, and can we talk in the morning? Is there something I need to pray about this? Well, yeah, sometimes that's the case.
Do I just need to pray over you?
Sometimes that's the case.
That's yeah. I mean, she asked. That's okay. The solution that you gave. That doesn't mean that, again, that's the other step. Like, and listening to that, and she, that's exactly right.
For real.
Like, she says, what should I do? And it's okay. It's okay for us as men. And I think women appreciate this, the fact that we can take a step back and say, you know what, I don't have an answer for that right now. Like, let's just drink some wine. Let's just have some dinner and enjoy our company with the kids, and let me process through those things before I answer that. That's a huge leadership. That's a sign of strength, a sign of wisdom. I love that word. That resonates within female's, not just her mind, but her heart as well, because she knows, okay, he heard what I said, and he's not only is he going to respond, but he's thinking about his response, which means that that's important.
That's exactly what I was thinking. And sometimes making that statement, this is important.
Yeah.
I want to make a good decision. I don't want to be a Josh decision. I want to be a God decision type of thing. Because sometimes it does come to that where, you're asked to basically run the play, so to speak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's your call now.
Right. And like just like you watched the end of the Nuggets game.
Oh yeah.
Like Malone had to call a timeout. Like there was a time of process, so they can close that game out and be done.
Go Nuggets!
No matter how go, yeah, absolutely.
Let's go!
Absolutely, super exciting. But there was a time for that, and you watch any of those games, they're trying to close the series out, close the team out. Just finish it off. Like you need a timeout. You need a time.
Purpose
to process, right? So that's a good segue into like what the why, the why piece, like why that whole process.
Like that food situation. Why the timeout? Why did he need to communicate to the team? Well,
and probably more than half the players were like coming to the bench, like, Coach, we got this. Like we have the momentum. Like, why are you calling timeout right now?
But it was smart.
But it was a smart thing to do, right? And you said this in your communication. Like sometimes you just need, like I mean, let's just focus on
timeout.
Let's just focus on like being present right now. Like let me take a timeout. Let me process through. Let me think of in my brain what I can do to help you, if anything.
Right. Because maybe I may not have a solution.
With this, let me think of my why, right? And then so it doesn't just come with that kind of situation, right? There's a ton of situations that we kind of navigate through in life, issues that we run into with our daily life as men, things that we run into with the kids, issues that come up that like just spike or unexpected with our partners, our wives, our girlfriends, that we internalize that we need to talk about. And so part of this communication piece is teaching men and empowering them.
I love that word.
To be okay with communicating these things. Because I will probably say, and I haven't done the research on this, I don't know the statistics about it, but a lot of marriages these days, they go south because of a lack of what we're talking about today, communication. And people just don't know how to speak each other's languages, and men specifically, we need to take ownership of this and responsibility for this, that we don't know the proper ways to communicate and trust our partners. It's not just about taking command and taking control and owning the situation and then just taking care of it.
It's a dance. It's like teamwork.
Any captain, any captain of the ship, any military structure, there has to be communication with everybody else involved. Doesn't matter what the decision is. The general may have made a decision, but everybody else knows what that decision is. And we can't afford, as leaders of our homes, leaders of our faith, leaders of our families, to discount that. That we still need to communicate those things. And so that that area that comes on our next question. Like, why am I communicating this?
Or when? Why and then when?
Why and then when?
Right.
Yeah.
So when are you going to discuss that?
Yeah.
To back up real quick, statistics you had mentioned, right? Did you know that 23% of statistics are made up on the spot?
No, I didn't know that. Really?
I don't know what number. I just made that up.
You know what? I took 6 stats classes in college, and my favorite thing about learning about statistics is how much you can manipulate those numbers.
Is that interesting?
It's incredible. From the way that you design the questions, from the to the way that you collect the data.
Right.
So we bank so much of facts on statistics, and they're just as manipulative as the human word.
Yeah.
Right. So it's, I mean, that's
so it's not far off because there's information that indicates that as well.
Point. Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I could design a survey that says exactly what I want it to say to back up my argument.
Exactly.
And it's the same kind of thing. So when we talk about communicating, especially our issues, right? Talk about why are we doing that? What is the, and you said when, right? So like, what is our end goal?
Yeah.
What do we need? As I think that's a huge thing that we discount about ourselves, that we fail to communicate is what we as men, what we need. Do we need our women to back us up? Do we need our partners to be there for us? Do we need our women to find a solution? Do we just need them to grab us a beer? And like, we don't.
When are you going to ask for that beer?
We don't say
when they're
that.
still standing up, or when they're sitting down?
Yeah, right. Like that's
when
the
are
when.
you communicating?
When are you going to do that?
Result.
Because again, you know, we joked about this. Like, I'm having an issue with something that just happened at a family reunion. Am I going to talk about it there?
When? Probably not now.
Probably not the best place to do that. And you know, sometimes we let that stuff fester and boil. You know, we lose track of where we're at presently. We take away from that time that we've got, especially at, I use a family reunion situation, but those are sacred times.
But still, it happens.
It does.
That family reunion stuff.
It does.
Family events, things.
I mean,
you know,
we have these devices, right? Like you and I, we went through our phones and found some like really cool stuff that you and I both like take notes of, and keep track of in our lives. I feel like that's something that like men, you know, don't do, that we can still take advantage of.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, like make a note of it.
Yeah, exactly.
Make a note of it, and then on the car ride home, or after the kids are in bed. And like, I mean, we can't be afraid. Again, as leaders, we should be empowered.
Be that lion.
Yes. To bring this up, like this is the time that I need to talk about this. Like, also, it might not be the right time in her mind. We need to respect those boundaries, especially with a partner involved. But like, knowing when to talk about this. I mean, we're not going to announce it in front of the entire family.
Yeah, but even like a work thing too.
Yes.
Or coaching kids.
Yeah.
I mean, like when that player makes a mistake and you pull off the field, when are you going to communicate? Are you just going to have them come off the field and just sit down? Or are you going to talk to them?
That's exactly right.
Before they go, like, when are you going to have that conversation?
And those are the little steps that make like a good leader, separates a good leader from like an okay leader, or like not a leader at all. You know, I've seen you do it too. Pull players from the game, our best players out there. They could have potentially like scored a winning goal. Pull the players out there just to have a teaching lesson with them, and then allowing them the time to process that before they get inserted back into the game. That's a sacrifice that you make for the greater good of the team. It's the same situation that you have to think of for your entire family, right? Whether that's, you know, husband, wife, kids, or, you know, brother, sister, mom, dad, whole situation, the hierarchy of the family, and own like the when are we going to have this discussion, and why are we having this discussion,
and where though too, right? That leads to kind of sometimes a location.
That's exactly right.
You know, like you had shared while we were preparing, you had shared a story about being an advocate for a friend, and really because you understood what they enjoyed, where you chose to allow for her to have the conversation with you made all the difference, right? Yeah,
that was a total like God thing. I had prayed about this before, and you know, the prayer of the day, you know, because I do a devotional every day and have my time with God every day, and the prayer for the day was, how can I show somebody else love by listening?
Did y'all hear that? The question was, how can I show someone love just by listening?
Which has always been a huge struggle for me, especially as a man, because again, we're fixers. So somebody tells a problem, I'm like, okay, Let's figure this out. That's not always the solution. Right? So we're having this ministry meeting. I can tell that she's struggling. She's not like fully present. I focus my intentions on the meeting, what I need to communicate there, and that kind of stuff. And then afterwards, she's not really open about sharing, right? So I said, you know what? We're gonna go to Starbucks. We're gonna get a coffee, and we can talk about it there. And the rest is kind of a God thing. It's just God guiding us through, and me specifically, as a leader, through this process. Because we get to Starbucks, we order. The lady over the counter, super friendly, also having a rough day. And I'm like, we want some snack food. And she doesn't want what Starbucks has. And so I said, well, let's go to next door. There's a little mom and pop place. And she says, well, you should go to there's a Hawaiian, barbecue.
Ooh,
very good food.
Hawaiian.
Very good food.
Selfish plug.
And so I said, let's just go there. Well, lo and behold, like those are the two things that really comfort her soul. She loves coffee from Starbucks, and she loves food. And all I did was sit there and listen. And me as a man, she left and she did her own thing, and I sat there in my car and I was like, man, I was not a good friend. I didn't offer any advice. I didn't offer her any solutions. And as soon as I said that, in my mind, and I'm trying to pray about this, she sends me a message that says, I'm so grateful for this time. Thank you so much for just listening to me. I feel so much better about everything, and now I can focus on the rest of my day.
Wow.
And that was like, I was like, oh. Because I mean, after the prayer that I had in my devotional, I mean, literally in that situation, God removed every capability that I had to fix the problem. I didn't have any thought or any process to help her work through that. Like I literally just sat there, and in my mind, because guys are focused on, I'm like, okay, this is somewhat interesting. This food is so good. I'm grateful for all of this. Like I didn't have any thought in my mind to help her with this problem. I just sat there, and I could repeat word for word everything that she said in her situation and her struggle for the day. It wasn't like I was checked out of the situation, but God removed all of my capability of basically responding with any sort of solution, because that's not what she needed. And in that moment, he taught me how simple that was. How easy. So after she sent me that message, I feel like God was saying to me, see, look how easy that was for you to just listen.
Yep. That was easy.
Yeah, that was, the easy
one. That was easy.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And so...
But it's not that easy.
You
have to make a decision to bite your tongue and only listen.
Well, God showed me how easy it was, but if God hadn't removed that from me, yes, 100% would have been difficult.
Yep.
Because genetically, traditionally, culturally, I'm a fixer.
Yeah. Like, here's what you got to do. No.
Yeah, can I have I was going to give you some advice. No, that's not what was needed.
Yeah.
In that area, and because I just
it's a great story.
Opened myself up that way, God just said, you know what? You don't have that ability right now.
Right.
Just focus on this, and then afterwards I'll show you why. And that's what he did. When I was feeling like inadequate, then he sent me that message from her, and then he was like, see how easy that is.
You did it.
You did it.
God high five.
God high five. Right? And see, so there's a time at which you really get all back in. It's not always right then and there that you need to communicate that, and that's another piece of communication that we as men need to take ownership of and need to take leadership of. Like, okay, that was not okay, but Yelling at our kids in front of everybody else is not the solution. Or yelling at our spouse and having an outburst in front of the entire family, not the solution. Embarrassing our family, not the solution. Right? So there's something to be said about when we're going to communicate and where we're at when we decide to do that. And primarily, it's in private. Right? Primarily, it's pulling aside and having a discussion. And our partners, our kids, our mentees will always appreciate that. You know, 'cause the environment in and of itself changes the entire message that we're trying to communicate.
That ties right into the next one of how.
Yeah.
How am I going to communicate?
Right.
And you've been talking about that, like not only where, the environment, but how. And sometimes how we don't communicate.
Yeah.
Just by listening. And the timing. That I feel like that ties in not only the environment, but timing and hearing what you share. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
I hope each of you are getting value off of what Chris is sharing, because sadly we've been through some pain in our lives, and we would like to try and help those not have to go through that. So if you can take from us, maybe you can avoid those scenarios. But you know, pain causes growth. That's what I've learned too. So you'll probably still go through stuff that's going to allow for you to grow. You'll get that opportunity. Which leads to, like, you know, originally we talked about the how am I was like how am I doing type of thing, like not just how am I, but like how am I, you know, in all these capacities as we discussed, like mentally and fitness, etc. And so in this one specifically, like how am I communicating? It's just incredible hearing you share, you know, what that is, because it's also, it sets the tone for that long-term relationship, or if it's a short-term relationship even, you know, how can we make that enjoyable? So how am I going to display that information? Like in business, right? You have a couple businesses. How you communicate in one business may be different than how you communicate in the other. And even coaching is a form of business. And how you communicate there is going to be unique as well.
Right.
You know?
I mean, what? I mean, you talk about coaching, right? And you and I have coached recreational and competitive at the same time. And right now, I'm going through recreational stuff. And you can't communicate with a young lady the same way that you communicate with a young man.
Right.
It's that they process information completely different.
Yep.
And so it's little things like that we as men have to recognize, especially when we have families, right? We have partners that are in this thing together, you know, through marriage or you know, life partners, you know, however that family structure is.
We encourage you to get married, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that'll happen again for you, I believe.
I believe so too.
That's true rebellion.
Following God's time
is the traditional family, I've noticed.
Yeah.
That's true rebellion, following God's will, having, you know, a family that you can take care of.
Yeah, you're not wrong. There's so much in this world that that goes against that, which, for, you know, in confirmation for Christian men, that's confirmation. I'm doing the right thing, because there's so much battling against my family, and I have so much resistance against that. In the Christian world, for me, it's confirmation.
Absolutely.
You know, when I get resistance, when I feel like I'm under fire, when I feel like I'm in battle, that to me tells me that I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path. I'm following God's will. I think that's when I'm under the most attack.
Yeah, I would agree with that. 2 billion%.
Yeah. So
right.
that's a great. That's a great point. I always encourage you to make a commitment to your family through marriage, through biblically, through the church, and you know whatever that belief system is that you carry. But this communication piece is unit. This episode is something that I feel like, you know, men really we've struggled with, and you know, I'm not perfect, you know, and we've talked about these are all struggles that we've gone through. I mean, the stories that I had this week, you know, that was God eliminating that from me, because I'm still struggling. To do that. This is a self-realization process that I'm still going through. And there's a ton of men still So
like a chisel.
Yeah.
You're just literally being sculpted, and it's painful. That chipping away at yourself can be challenging.
Yeah.
And so many moments have happened in my life that like God has just completely stripped my pride and ego away to allow for me to really walk thoroughly through the Holy Spirit. And it's beautiful, and it's painful and difficult, you know. But when you get to the end of a scenario, when you reach that growth mode, you're like, wow, now I'm stronger. Now I'm better. And so when stuff happens, it's like you're scarred.
Yeah.
So like you got this like extra layer of toughness emotionally and so on, you know.
I think the pieces that we don't identify as men are the pieces and the elements of what we would consider weakness and vulnerability that really trajected some of the best leaders in the history of the world to their platform. You know, like all the way back to Abraham Lincoln, to some of the other best presidents that we've got, and you know, like the things that happened in their lives that really kind of broke them down to realize this isn't just about me. Like, this is a community thing, a cumulative thing, and this is me being vulnerable about this situation. And we take those things for granted as men a lot of times, which I think those pieces, those moments, and taking ownership of those vulnerability pieces make us the strongest men that we could ever be. And that's because like you use biblical. Those are biblical things. Submission is a biblical thing. Submissing to our partner, our wives in some cases. Submissing to our faith.
Absolutely.
Two very, very, I mean, regardless of what you submit to afterwards, but those two things could make or break your marriage and your partnership. And within communication, the things that we've identified through this episode, they continuously help me on a day-to-day basis. And so I encourage you to rewind this episode and write who am I, what am I, why am I, when am I, where am I, and how am I communicating what I need to whoever. I think this method is not the only method, but it's a very good one that we've learned from, that's helped us through not just within our family, but through coaching and mentoring other people and kids, and you know, in the workplace and all kinds of other environments and situations that we've kind of already been exposed to. And so I encourage you to kind of continue to build on those things. And if you have other things that have worked for you, love to
please comment.
Yeah, you leave them in the comments, suggestions, things like that. We want to hear from you. We know that our method isn't the only method. We want to continue to grow this message, and again, continue to empower men through situations that we've gone through and learned through, and books that we've read and things like that. We want to hear from other men that are in this culture and want to continue to grow and be better men. And so we love to hear from you.
You can also email us if you don't want to put a comment, uncommonpodcast@gmail.com. So, and just to kind of recap what we were discussing, the who am I and what am I is the purpose, okay, of the communication factor, right? Why am I and when am I? That's helping you find that end result, okay, that goal of the purpose for communicating. And then where am I and how am I? That's going to be that environment and the timing scenario. So just to recap with that, so hopefully that allows for you to kind of get a better idea, to allow for you to free range with that. How we think is based on the questions that we ask ourselves, and that's what we had talked about in the previous podcast. So keep that in mind, because if you're not asking yourself questions like this, are you growing? And so you want to really do your best to try and make yourself improve, and one of the ways is improving your communication. We hope that this podcast has been insightful and helpful. We do thank you for tuning in to The Uncommon Podcast. I'm Josh, this is Chris, and we are The Uncommon Podcast! We'll see you next time. Nice. And like you fade out.
Sweetness.
That was good, Chris. I feel really good about it.
Sweetness.